Well, as you can see, we're coming into spring, and around about this time you want to be thinking about feeding your plants. So they're about to start pumping out fruit and leaves and blossoms and what have you. We're getting into the growth season, so that's when they need access to nutrients. Now, I was thinking about my mate who runs an organic farm. Now, the way that he maintains fertility is after a crop, he'll run cattle through. Cattle eat the grass down to a certain length, then he'll run sheep through, and they eat it lower still. Now, what that's about is getting them to poo on the ground. It's part of the nutrient cycle. Of course, that gets absorbed into the ground is enriched, and it's ready to it's ready for planting again at some point a little bit further down the track. Usually, by the way, there's a rest period in there as well. So in my own garden, as you look around, behind me is a climbing rose. It's a new one. Now, I haven't fed this too heavily because it's a baby, but a couple of weeks ago I just put a thin layer of blood and bone around it and just kind of lightly dug it into the soil like that. Now, the thing is with blood and bone, it takes around about 6 weeks before it's accessible to the plant's roots. So if you're thinking, put it on kind of towards the end of August or mid-August, it's going to be ready when the plant starts pushing out buds and pushing out leaves and really needs those access to those nutrients. Now, just today, I've gone around with some sheep poo. Now look at that. I don't know if you can see that clearly, but that's actually aged. Now, usually you wouldn't put fresh sheep poo directly onto bare soil like this. You would maybe compost it first, but this stuff's been sitting in a sheep shed for years. And a guy I know dug it out. Here I am. I dug it out and sold it to me. So I've spread it around my garden today. Ideally, you see, I mean, usually what you'd say is you'd kind of mix it in to the soil a bit, and then water in it. It's just about to rain. Because it's aged, I didn't bother too much with that. But as we look around, so we talked about the rose, so that needs a reasonable amount of fertility, but it's a new rose. So I spread quite a thin layer of the sheep poo around it. Here, this is a baby gooseberry with some miner's lettuce growing out from underneath it. Again, it's new. Now, I actually want this. I'm not that bothered about fruit from a new plant. In fact, it's going to take a wee while yet before it actually starts producing fruit. But I want it growing and pumping out leaves and what have you. So I put a little bit more, but not too much, because I don't want too much leafy growth too early. I want strong plants. Over this way, I'll just move. Oh, there's a buttercup. This is a mature Granny Smith apple tree. So again, quite a bit more around it. But again, if you think about sheep, sheep leave their poo and scattered or in little piles. You don't see massive mounds of it. And that kind of gives you some clues around what your garden might need. Also, so with a tree like this, sure, it loves a good feed just before the growing season, but not too much. Again, a reasonably thin layer around this tree. And as you can see, as we're talking, I'm just moving it out away from the trunk, so it's under the drip line. So when the rain falls, that's where the water drops. That's kind of where the roots are, and that's where it needs a feed. Now, last thing, natives. Here's a native grass. It's fairly new. Behind it are some that are really exploded into growth. Now again, they're natives growing in native soil. These grasses are pretty hardy as they are, and the sedges as well. They are pretty hardy as they are. They don't actually need a lot of fertility on the ground. Most of them pretty much dig a hole and plonk them in, unless it's solid, deep, dark, dank clay, in which case you might want to put some humate in. You might want to put a little bit of sheep poo, you might want to put a little bit of compost in, mix it into the ground, just kind of break it up, and then plant the plant on top of that. anyway, there's just a little bit on soil fertility. In this case, it's specific to blood and bone and sheep poo.